Let's take a look at Leet code question 3, longest substring without repeating characters. And this is a great question to practice your string algorithms. Given a string S, find the length of the longest substring without repeating characters. And then we have this note: a substring is a contiguous, non-empty sequence of characters within a string. So we have an example here. We have the string here, ABC, ABC, BB. And then we want to look for the longest substring without repeating characters. So we can see that the first three characters here, ABC, they're non-repeating. And then when we go to the next character, there's an A, so that's repeating. So that's ABC with the length 3. So then we have the string BBBBB. So the longest non-repeating character is just the letter B. So let's go ahead and actually dive into the code here. So we want to work out the length of the longest substring. So let's start by defining a variable here, longest substring length. And we're going to initialize that equal to 0. And then we're going to go ahead and return the longest substring length. And we're going to have an intermediate step between that. So what we want to do is we need to loop through every character of our string. So let's say we have let character of S to loop through each of the characters we're given in the string that we're given. What we can do is we can get the index of the character, because we'll need to keep track of the index to know whether or not to splice it from the current substring array. So basically what we can say here is we can say, let's have a variable for the character index, and that's just going to be, well, firstly, let's go ahead and have a variable here called the substring array. And this is going to be a string array, which we're going to initialize to an empty array. And what this is going to do is this is going to keep track of our substring. And it might not necessarily be the longest substring, but it's just the substring which isn't repeating for the current iteration we're on. So we can find the index of that, and we can say, well, actually, before I do that, I think it will make more sense if we say, well, as we're looping through this, so let me just comment this out for just a second. We need to loop through our array here, and as we're looping through our array, we can say we can simply just push the character to the array. So initially it's empty, and then we're going to push characters to the array. So we don't necessarily want to do that if the character repeats though. And if the character repeats, we need to track the index such that if it does repeat, we can splice out the characters before that. So let's just take the index by taking that array and using the index of method, which is of n. And so if our character is in the substring array, that means we've hit a repeated character. So if that's the case, well, let's say that if the character index, if that's going to be greater than or equal to 0, meaning that an index was found, meaning there's a repeated character, we'll need to remove that. So what we can do, and then we'll also need to remove all of the characters before that. So what we can do is we can take the substring array and we can say, well, we want to splice out. Here we've got 0. And then what we want to delete is we want to delete the character index +1. So what we want to do is we want to take our substring array, and if we find a repeated character, we want to remove all the characters up until that repeated character. So this first element, we'll splice it mutate substring array, and we don't want to insert anything, but we do want to delete the number of characters that are after the index, and then we can just add 1 to that because we don't want to delete that new number itself. We want to keep that because we're going to remove the ones before it. So basically what we can say is we can take the longest substring length and we can say, well, the longest substring length, it's either going to be the length of the longest substring length that we already have, or it's going to be the length of the new substring array that we've found. And whichever the one is greater, that's what we'll use. So we can use this math method here, the math max, and we can just pass in this here. And then we can go ahead and we can pass in the substring array. And then we can just get the length of that. So basically, this is a for loop, but we got this substring array index of, which is an of n operation. So that'll make the time complexity of n squared. And we need to assign potentially all of the characters to an array if none of them are duplicated. So there'll be O of n there. So let's go ahead and submit this. And we see that that beats 71%. So that's not too bad.